After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, many republics and autonomous regions began striving for independence. And in 1991, Jahar Dudayev declared the independence of the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, and this led to tensions with the Central Russian government, which did not recognize the region's independence. In 1994, Russian troops entered the Chechnya to restore control over the region. The war was brutal and bloody, with heavy casualties on both sides. In 1996, the conflict ended with signing of agreements, and Russian troops were withdrawn from Chechnya, but the region's status remained unresolved. In 1999, following a series of terrorist attacks and assaults on Dagestan, Russia reintroduced troops into Chechnya under the pretext of combating terrorism and restoring constitutional order, and this war lasted for a full 10 years. The Chechen issue remains one of the most contentious in Russia. In recent times, attitudes towards Chechen fighters have remained ambivalent. Some Russian citizens believe that the war in Chechnya was unnecessary, that Chechen independence would have been more appropriate. And in this video we will discuss why Russia did not allow Chechnya to secede.
The first and most important reason is the spread of separatism throughout Russia. In the 1990s, there were numerous separatist groups across the country. Thus, the precedent of Chechen secession could have become a starting point for the separation of other regions and the growth of separatism across the country. Suppressing Chechen separatists made it clear to other regions that Russia would not allow them to live easily. At that time, separatist sentiments were extremely popular in Tatarstan. Tatarstan declared its sovereignty back in 1990, and in 1992, a referendum on independence was held, in which the Tatars supported the creation of a sovereign Tatarstan. In 1994, Tatarstan moved closer to Russia and signed a treaty of alliance, placing the two parties on equal footing, although now only the name of this treaty remains. Separatist groups were also present in Karelia, the Urals and the Caucasus. Regarding the latter, it was closely linked with Chechnya, and Chechen separatists often incited Dagestan to revolt. There were even plans to create an Islamic state across the entire Caucasus. In general, Chechen separatism could have significantly impacted Russia's territorial integrity and led to an increase in separatism across the country. The second reason is the reprisals against Russian citizens in Chechnya. After the establishment of separatist power in Chechnya, there was a rise in crime, and anarchy reigned in the streets. The authorities did not control many processes and turned a blind eye to some. In the 1990s, ethnic-based persecutions and reprisals began in Chechnya, primarily affecting Russians, who then made up almost a quarter of Chechnya's population. A real war was waged against non-indigenous ethnic groups, with beatings and murders occurring on the streets of cities. Thousands of cases of forced evictions of non-Chechen residents from their homes occurred, and even cases of people being enslaved were reported. Such circumstances forced Russians and other minorities to flee en masse from Chechnya. At the same time, the Russian government could not influence the region, as it was not under its control. Incidentally, in 1989, about 300,000 Russians lived in Chechnya out of total population of 1.2 million. In Grozny, Russians almost equaled the Chechen population, with 210,000 residing there. During Chechenya's secession and subsequent wars, nearly all Russians fled the region, and according to the latest census, 25,000 Russians remained there. Apart from the internal conflicts within the region, Chechen problems spilled over into neighboring Russian regions. Thus, Chechen criminal activity became especially active during the period between the two Chechen wars. There were regular kidnappings of people across Russia. For example, even a United Nations representative was taken hostage in North Ossetia, although he was freed by Russian special forces almost a year later. Such cases were not exceptions. In general, Chechnya's internal problems often affected Russia and were connected with its citizens. This factor also became quite significant when deciding to start the war in Chechnya. The First Chechen War, in fact, did not solve these problems, but only exacerbated them. In addition to internal separatism, Russia feared losing Chechnya due to international status and geopolitical ambitions. The loss of the region would mean a loss of positions on the world stage, which Russia was already experiencing after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Russia was in a rather vulnerable position, So, losing Chechnya would mean a loss of so-called prestige for it. In general, Russia's imperialist ambitions as a country with a vast territory and hundreds of nationalities also play a role here. Russia is practically the only country in the world that has not yet said goodbye to its colonial past and has not undergone the process of decolonization, as all Western countries have. Some researchers note that oil also became an important motive for reclaiming the region. However, things are not so straightforward here. Indeed, since Soviet times, Chechnya had been a major oil center. There were 3 oil refineries, 1 gas processing plant, and numerous educational institutions specializing in the oil industry. Nevertheless, the entire industry was essentially destroyed during the Chechen Wars and has not been restored to this day. There is not even a single oil refinery in Chechnya, and extraction is carried out at extremely low rates. Chechnya's share of Russian oil production is less than 1%. In general, the motive for the fight purely for oil is quite shaky, given the current realities. As for other sectors of the economy, the region is also underdeveloped in all areas and is subsidized. Another motive often mentioned is the distraction from real problems, claiming that Yeltsin started the war to divert attention to it. This argument is also quite shaky, because the Chechen campaign was quite unpopular in Russia, and with the failure of the war, the Chechen question became one of the central issues in Russian politics.